Growing up, Claire, 42F, always felt invisible in my family. My younger sister, Lauren, 38F, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who basked in the endless attention and praise from our parents. No matter how much I accomplished or how hard I worked, I was always an afterthought. It's taken me years to accept the reality of my family's dynamics, and the breaking point came at my wedding. What happened exposed the truth about Lauren, shattered the facade my parents had been protecting for decades, and forced me to choose myself for the first time in my life. A childhood of unequal attention. Even as a child, the differences in how my sister and I were treated were glaringly obvious. Lauren was outgoing, charismatic, and loved performing for anyone who would watch. She had a flair for drama, always singing, dancing, or acting out scenes from her favorite movies. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more introspective. I loved reading and tinkering with gadgets, fascinated by how things worked. "Why can't you be more like Lauren?" my mom would say whenever I hesitated to join in social gatherings. "You're so serious all the time." When I turned 10, I asked for a chemistry set for my birthday. Instead, I received a set of second-hand books. Mom brushed off my disappointment, saying, "Books are more practical anyway." 2 months later, Lauren announced that she wanted to take ballet lessons. Suddenly, my parents found the money to enroll her in private classes, complete with custom tutus and brand new point shoes. Grandma Eleanor, my safe haven. Thankfully, I had one person who always supported me, my grandmother Eleanor. She lived just a few blocks away and became my refuge from the constant comparisons at home. Grandma Eleanor had been a high school science teacher before she retired, and she immediately recognized my curiosity and love for learning. "You have a brilliant mind, Claire," she'd say, her eyes lighting up as we conducted experiments in her kitchen or gazed at the stars from her backyard. While my parents spent their weekends shuttling Lauren to recitals and auditions, I spent mine with Grandma Eleanor, soaking in her encouragement and wisdom. Teenage years, favoritism on full display. By the time I was a teenager, the gap in how my parents treated Lauren and me had become a chasm. When I was 14, I spent months developing a renewable energy project for the state science fair. I won first place, but my parents didn't even attend the award ceremony because Lauren had a theater audition that day. That same year, Lauren landed a minor role in a local play. My parents threw her a lavish party to celebrate, complete with catering, decorations, and a professional photographer. My science award barely earned a "Good job, Claire," before the conversation shifted back to Lauren's latest performance. In high school, I maintained a perfect GPA, became president of the science club, and even served as editor of the school newspaper. But my achievements were barely acknowledged. At dinner, my parents would talk endlessly about Lauren's acting gigs, her social life, or her new boyfriend. If I mentioned an accomplishment, it was quickly brushed aside with, "Oh, that's nice, Claire," before returning to whatever Lauren was up to. When it came time for college, the disparity between how my parents treated Lauren and me reached a new level. I worked tirelessly to secure a full scholarship to a prestigious university, earning a spot in their biochemistry program. When my acceptance letter arrived, my mom's only response was, "Well, that's one less expense for us to worry about." Meanwhile, Lauren decided she wanted to attend an expensive performing arts school. My parents didn't hesitate to sell our family's vacation cabin to cover her tuition. "Lauren has so much potential," Dad said when I questioned their decision. "We can't let her talent go to waste." Despite their lack of enthusiasm, I thrived in college. My professors recognized my dedication and talent, and the lab became my sanctuary. When I graduated with honors, my parents left the ceremony early to take Lauren to a callback for a regional commercial. In my 20s and 30s, I built a career I was proud of. I secured competitive research grants, published in prestigious journals, and became a respected voice in molecular biology. By the time I turned 40, I had achieved tenure, a rare and highly coveted milestone in academia. But even as I climbed the ranks of my field, my family's focus remained on Lauren. At family gatherings, any mention of my work was met with disinterest. "Oh, Claire's still doing her science stuff," Mom would say dismissively before turning the conversation to Lauren's latest acting gig or her glamorous life with her husband, Ethan, a successful real estate developer. I learned to find validation in my career, knowing I would never receive it from my family. A few years ago, I met Adam, a fellow researcher at my university. We bonded over our shared passion for science, and our relationship grew naturally over time. When Adam proposed, I thought this might finally be the milestone my family would celebrate. For once, I had something that might rival Lauren's achievements. But life had other plans. One evening, just a week before my wedding, I stayed late at the lab to finalize some data for a project. Feeling excited, I decided to surprise Adam at his office with the results. Instead, I walked in on him passionately kissing Lauren, my sister, who was still very much married to Ethan. The betrayal was a crushing blow, but what hurt even more was my parents' reaction. When I told them what had happened, their first concern wasn't me, it was Lauren. "Please don't tell Ethan," Mom begged. "Think about what this could do to your sister's life." "These things happen, Claire," Dad added. "You need to be the bigger person here." Years of silent resentment boiled to the surface. For decades, I had been the bigger person. I stayed quiet when they skipped my science fair for Lauren's audition, missed my graduation to celebrate her callback, and sold the vacation cabin to fund her dreams while dismissing mine. But this time was different. "I've been the bigger person my entire life," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You chose her over me again and again. You've ignored my accomplishments, dismissed my feelings, and now you're asking me to protect her after she betrayed me?" For the first time, my parents looked genuinely speechless. I turned and left, realizing that I could no longer seek their approval. It was time to set boundaries. 2 weeks after that confrontation, I attended a university fundraiser. That's where I met Noah, an architect presenting designs for a new science facility. Noah was everything Adam wasn't: attentive, thoughtful, and kind. He didn't try to outshine or compete with me. Instead, he listened intently when I talked about my research and even asked insightful questions. Over coffee, he shared his passion for designing spaces that inspire creativity and collaboration. I found myself opening up to him about my work in a way I hadn't with anyone else. When I told Grandma Eleanor about Noah, she smiled knowingly. "You sound different," she said. "Lighter, happier. Tell me more about this architect." As my relationship with Noah grew, so did my resolve to stop letting my family dictate my happiness. Grandma Eleanor, my rock through it all, encouraged me to take control of my own narrative. "They've spent decades trying to make Lauren the center of everything," she said. "But you've been writing your own story all along. Maybe it's time to stop letting them edit it." Her words resonated deeply. When Noah proposed a few months later, I knew exactly how I wanted my wedding to be: small, intimate, and filled with people who truly supported me. Lauren and my parents weren't invited. Predictably, my decision didn't sit well with my parents. "How could you exclude your own sister?" Mom cried during one of her many calls. "Lauren has written a beautiful speech about forgiveness. It will make the wedding so meaningful." I refused to budge. Meanwhile, Aunt Carol overheard Lauren boasting about her plans to crash the wedding. "She's already bought a white dress," Aunt Carol warned. "She said she's going to steal the show." When I confronted my parents, they didn't deny giving Lauren the wedding details. "We couldn't let you make the mistake of excluding her," Dad said, as though their interference was some kind of favor. Once again, they prioritized Lauren over me. Determined not to let Lauren ruin my wedding, Noah and I took precautions. We hired extra security and gave them strict instructions not to let Lauren or my parents inside. Grandma Eleanor, ever sharp and protective, even offered to act as a lookout at the entrance. She wouldn't dare try to get past me, she said with a mischievous grin. Despite the precautions, I couldn't shake the sense of dread. Instead of feeling excited about my wedding, I spent the days leading up to it bracing for chaos. Sure enough, Lauren arrived uninvited, wearing a floor-length white gown that looked more suited for an award show than a garden wedding. My parents followed, with Mom sobbing dramatically about being excluded and Dad trying to reason with the security team. When I saw the commotion from the bridal suite, something inside me snapped. Walking to the entrance in my wedding dress, I finally decided to confront them head-on. "Claire, how could you do this to me?" Lauren wailed, her voice dripping with fake tears. "I came here to support you, and this is how you treat me?" Before I could respond, another car pulled into the parking lot, Ethan's. Ethan stepped out of the car, his expression cold and unreadable. "I know about you and Adam," he said to Lauren. "How long did you think you could keep it a secret?" Lauren tried to deny it, but her phone, which was still connected to her car's Bluetooth, rang at that exact moment. Adam's name flashed on the screen, and his voice echoed through the parking lot. "Hey, babe, are you still coming over later?" The color drained from Lauren's face. Ethan turned to me, his voice steady. "I'm sorry this had to happen at your wedding, Claire. You deserved better." Then, without another word, he walked away. Lauren chased after him, screaming his name, while my parents turned their fury on me. "Look what you've done," Mom hissed. "If you had just invited her properly, none of this would have happened." But I didn't back down. "No, Mom," I said firmly. "These are Lauren's choices, not mine. She had an affair with my fiancé, came here uninvited, and tried to ruin my wedding. That's on her, not me." For the first time in my life, I felt free. Once Lauren and my parents left, the remaining guests rallied around me. "Well, Noah's mother, a retired judge, said with a warm smile, now that the drama is over, shall we have a wedding?" The ceremony was everything I'd dreamed of, intimate, joyful, and surrounded by people who truly cared about me. Noah's vows brought me to tears. "I love you for your mind as much as your heart," he said. "Together, we'll build a life filled with respect, trust, and endless possibility." As we exchanged rings under the dappled sunlight, I realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I no longer had to shrink myself to make room for others. The day after the wedding, Aunt Carol called me with an update. Ethan had officially filed for divorce from Lauren. Because of their prenuptial agreement, Lauren would leave the marriage with nothing. Predictably, my parents were devastated, not by what Lauren had done, but by what they saw as the unfair consequences she now faced. "She needs us now more than ever," Mom said when she called me later that week. "I don't know how you can turn your back on your sister at a time like this." But I didn't feel guilty. For years, I had sacrificed my happiness to accommodate Lauren's drama. This time, I chose myself. Noah and I left for our honeymoon shortly after the wedding. We spent 2 weeks in New Zealand, a perfect mix of adventure and relaxation. By day, we hiked through lush landscapes and visited cutting-edge research facilities. By night, we talked about our plans for the future. One evening, as we watched the sun set over a serene valley, Noah turned to me and said, "You've spent so much of your life being someone else's afterthought. It's time for you to put yourself first." His words stayed with me. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. When we returned home, the fallout from the wedding continued to ripple through my family. Lauren, predictably, played the victim. She called everyone she could to complain about how I had ruined her life by exposing her affair. My parents, of course, sided with her. "You didn't have to humiliate her in front of everyone," Dad said during one of our rare phone conversations. "Family is supposed to stick together, Claire." But I refused to let them rewrite the narrative. "No, Dad," I said. Family is supposed to support each other, not enable bad behavior. Lauren made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. After that, the calls became less frequent. While my relationship with my parents deteriorated, my bond with Noah's family grew stronger. His sister, a literature professor, became one of my closest confidants. His parents, who had already shown me more kindness than my own ever had, welcomed me with open arms. For the first time, I experienced what it meant to be part of a family that celebrated each other's successes without competition or favoritism. Noah's mother, a retired judge, once told me something that resonated deeply. Family isn't about who shares your blood, it's about who shares your values. Back at the lab, I threw myself into my research with renewed focus. The clarity of data analysis and the precision of scientific work were a welcome contrast to the emotional chaos of my family. Our team secured additional funding for our cellular regeneration project, and the innovative design Noah had contributed to the new research facility was already fostering incredible breakthroughs. One day, as I reviewed the latest results, I thought about how far I'd come. For years, I had sought validation from my parents, only to find it in the quiet achievements of my work. Now, I didn't need their approval at all. Throughout it all, Grandma Eleanor remained my guiding light. "They've spent decades trying to make Lauren the center of everything," she said during one of our tea dates. "But you've always been the steady star. You just needed to stop letting them dim your light." Her words gave me the strength to let go of the lingering guilt and focus on my future. Occasionally, Aunt Carol would update me about Lauren and my parents. Ethan had moved on, and Lauren was struggling to rebuild her life. My parents, as expected, were doing everything they could to support her. "They'll come around eventually," Aunt Carol said. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter anymore. I no longer needed their approval or involvement in my life. Noah and I began planning the next chapter of our lives together. We talked about starting a family and the kind of environment we wanted to create, one filled with kindness, respect, and encouragement. I knew exactly the kind of parent I wanted to be, one who celebrated their child's individuality and nurtured their passions, no matter what they were. In the meantime, I found joy in the life Noah and I were building together. Our home was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of mutual respect I had always longed for. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I feel a deep sense of clarity and peace. For years, I allowed myself to be defined by my family's narrative, a supporting role in Lauren's spotlight. But now, I see that their version of events was never the truth. I've built a fulfilling career, surrounded myself with people who genuinely value me, and found a partner who loves me for who I am. Grandma Eleanor said it best. "The best stories aren't the ones someone else writes for you, they're the ones you create for yourself." This is my story now, and for the first time, I'm living it on my own terms. After the wedding and the fallout, I realized that rebuilding my life wasn't just about cutting out the toxic relationships, it was about nurturing the ones that truly mattered. Noah's support became my anchor. Together, we built a life centered around mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and unconditional love. He never dismissed my passions or accomplishments, instead, he celebrated them. One evening, as we worked on renovating the small garden behind our home, Noah turned to me and said, "This reminds me of your research. Careful planning, constant nurturing, and eventually, it blooms into something extraordinary." He had a way of seeing beauty in everything, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was with someone who truly saw me. While my relationship with my parents and Lauren remained strained, I began to set clear boundaries. When my mother called, yet again trying to guilt me into fixing things with Lauren, I calmly explained my position. "Mom, I love you, but I won't keep sacrificing my happiness for Lauren's choices. If she wants a relationship with me, she'll need to take accountability for her actions." Predictably, Mom accused me of being selfish. But instead of feeling hurt, I felt liberated. I no longer needed their approval, and I was finally free to live life on my own terms. One of the most bittersweet moments during this time was saying goodbye to Grandma Eleanor. At 92, she passed away peacefully in her sleep, leaving behind a legacy of wisdom, kindness, and strength. Her funeral was a small, intimate affair, just as she had wanted. In her will, she left me her cherished telescope, the one we used to stargaze with when I was a child. She always said you'd reach for the stars, Aunt Carol told me as she handed it to me. And she was right. I set up the telescope in our garden that evening, and as Noah and I looked at the night sky, I felt a profound sense of connection to her. She had always believed in me, even when no one else did, and her encouragement had shaped the person I had become. At work, things were thriving. The research facility Noah had designed became a hub for groundbreaking projects, and my team achieved significant progress in our cellular regeneration studies. One of my papers was even nominated for a prestigious award, which felt like validation for years of hard work and dedication. When the award ceremony came around, Noah was right by my side, beaming with pride as my name was called. "This is just the beginning," he whispered as I held the plaque in my hands. For the first time, I felt like my accomplishments weren't just a personal victory, they were a testament to the support and love that surrounded me. While I was building a life I could be proud of, Lauren's world was unraveling. Her divorce from Ethan left her in a precarious financial position, and her attempts to restart her acting career were met with little success. Aunt Carol occasionally updated me, mentioning how Lauren had moved back in with our parents and was relying on them to support her. "She still thinks the world owes her something," Aunt Carol said during one of our calls. I felt a twinge of sympathy, but I knew it wasn't my responsibility to save her. Lauren had spent her life making choices that hurt others, and now, she was facing the consequences of those decisions. In the months that followed, I found myself reconnecting with parts of myself that I had long suppressed. Noah and I took up hiking on the weekends, exploring trails and waterfalls that felt like hidden treasures. I started painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned during my college years, and even signed up for a local art class. One day, as I worked on a watercolor piece of the night sky, Noah walked in and said, "You look so peaceful. I've never seen you this relaxed." He was right. For the first time in decades, I felt a sense of balance and fulfillment. Noah and I began talking about the possibility of starting a family. "I want our kids to grow up in a home where they feel valued for who they are," I told him during one of our late-night conversations. He nodded, taking my hand. "And they'll have the best role model in you, Claire." We also discussed the kind of legacy we wanted to leave behind, not just for our future children, but for the world. Noah's architectural designs and my research both had the potential to make a lasting impact, and we were committed to using our talents to create something meaningful. As part of my healing journey, I decided to write a letter to my parents, not to rekindle our relationship, but to express the emotions I had kept bottled up for so long. In the letter, I explained how their favoritism had affected me, how it had shaped my insecurities, and how it had driven a wedge between us. "I needed your support, but instead, I had to find it elsewhere," I wrote. "I'm not writing this to blame you, but to let go of the pain I've carried for so many years. I've built a life I'm proud of, and I hope one day you'll understand the choices I've made." I never received a response, and I didn't expect one. Writing the letter wasn't about them, it was about me finding closure. As I sit here now, reflecting on the journey that brought me to this point, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Grandma Eleanor, who saw my potential when no one else did. Gratitude for Noah, who showed me what true partnership looks like. And gratitude for the strength I found within myself to break free from the shadow of my family's expectations. The telescope Grandma left me now sits in a place of honor in our home. Every time I look through it, I'm reminded of her words. "Reach for the stars, Claire. You were meant for greatness." This is my story now. And for the first time, it feels like it's truly mine. After sending the letter to my parents, I felt an immense weight lift from my shoulders. I hadn't expected an apology or even an acknowledgement, and I didn't get one. My parents remained silent, as they always had when faced with anything that didn't center on Lauren. But this time, their silence didn't hurt, it clarified my decision to prioritize my own happiness. I chose not to block their calls or emails entirely, but I stopped responding to the guilt trips and emotional manipulation. Whenever they reached out to tell me how hard things were for Lauren, would politely but firmly redirect the conversation or end it entirely. Aunt Carol became my unlikely ally during this time. She, too, had grown tired of Lauren's antics and my parents' enabling behavior. "You've handled this with more grace than anyone could have expected," she told me during one of our regular phone calls. "It's about time someone in this family stood up for themselves." The telescope Grandma Eleanor left me became more than just a sentimental keepsake, it became a symbol of the lessons she had taught me. On clear nights, Noah and I would set it up in the backyard, gazing at constellations and sharing stories about our childhoods. Sometimes, I would imagine Grandma sitting beside us, pointing out the same stars she had shown me decades ago. One night, as we packed up the telescope after an evening of stargazing, Noah turned to me and said, "Your grandmother left an incredible legacy, not just in what she taught you, but in the way you live your life." His words stayed with me, inspiring me to find ways to carry her wisdom forward. Several months after the wedding, I received an unexpected email from my mother. "We're having a small family dinner this weekend. It would mean a lot if you could come. Lauren will be here too, and I think it's time we all talk things out." I stared at the email, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. For years, they had minimized my feelings, and now, they wanted me to sit down with the sister who had betrayed me and the parents who had enabled her. I discussed it with Noah and Aunt Carol, who both supported whatever decision I made. Ultimately, I chose not to go. Instead, I replied, "Thank you for the invitation, but I don't think a family dinner is the right setting for this conversation. If Lauren wants to apologize, she can reach out to me directly. Until then, I'm not ready to reopen old wounds." Predictably, I received no response. As the months turned into years, my life became increasingly rich and fulfilling. Noah and I expanded our hobbies, traveling to new destinations, tackling home improvement projects, and collaborating on community initiatives. At work, my research team made a breakthrough in our cellular regeneration studies, leading to a publication in one of the most prestigious journals in the field. During the conference where I presented our findings, I received a standing ovation, a moment that felt like the culmination of years of hard work and determination. As I looked out at the audience, I thought of Grandma Eleanor and the quiet strength she had instilled in me. From what Aunt Carol told me, Lauren's situation only worsened after her divorce. She struggled to find acting work, moved back in with my parents, and relied heavily on them for financial support. "She still acts like the world owes her something," Aunt Carol said during one of our conversations. I felt a pang of sympathy but reminded myself that Lauren had spent her life making choices without regard for the consequences. Her struggles were not my responsibility to fix. Noah and I eventually decided to start a family. The journey wasn't easy, we faced setbacks and uncertainties, but it brought us closer together. When our daughter, Eleanor, was born, I felt a kind of joy I had never experienced before. Holding her in my arms, I promised to be the kind of parent who celebrated her for who she was, not for who I wanted her to be. Grandma Eleanor's telescope now sits in our daughter's nursery, a quiet reminder of the values I want to pass on to her: curiosity, resilience, and the courage to chart her own path. One evening, as I rocked Eleanor to sleep, I thought about how far I had come. For years, I had allowed my family's favoritism to shape my identity, convincing myself that I was less worthy, less important, and less deserving than Lauren. But now, I saw the truth. I was more than enough. Through hard work, self-reflection, and the support of people who truly cared for me, I had built a life filled with love, purpose, and fulfillment. The life Noah and I have created is far from perfect, but it's ours. It's built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared dreams, and an unwavering commitment to being present for each other. As I sit here now, writing this, I feel nothing but gratitude, for Grandma Eleanor's guidance, for Noah's unwavering support, and for the strength I found within myself to break free from the past. This is my story now, and for the first time, it feels truly mine.